Bodies to rein in their neighbours if they are found abusing press freedoms. The body Shireen Mukadam made the call while appearing exclusively on SABC earlier today. The call comes soon after the SABC's Nthakoana, who was based in Lesotho, fled the country for South Africa. The body said a few months ago that ongoing harassment of journalists showed that hard-won press freedom rights fought for during the colonial era have been lost.
Paper-wise, they are not compliant, actually. And what Amnesty International has done is that we have documented a public statement of a new human rights agenda with clear recommendations to the new Lesotho government of how they can address the past culture for impunity for human rights violations in terms specifically of the attack on freedom of expression, which we are seeing continuing in Lesotho today, despite the new regime. What Amnesty International is calling for the new authorities is to publicly reaffirm its commitment to respect, protect and fulfill the right to freedom of expression, which includes the right to seek, receive and impart information. We're also calling for prompt investigations into the shooting of Lesotho Times editor Lloyd Mutunga Miri, which took place on the 9th of July last year. More than a year later, we are seeing a lack of justice for this crime. I think the right of journalists to do their work is part of freedom of expression, and if a journalist's work is interfered with, if a journalist is not able to do their work as they should do, then their right to freedom of expression is being undermined. What we need to do is to remind the Lesotho government of their obligations, including in their own Lesotho constitution and the international human rights obligations to the international covenants that they have signed, which protects the right to freedom of expression. And other African governments and other regional bodies like SADC have a role to play in holding Lesotho accountable.
Not to be able to do her job.
Regional bodies, like you have said, like SADC and the AU and the United Nations, have a responsibility to hold the government of Lesotho accountable. Neighbouring countries, including South Africa, also have a responsibility. What we have seen is that SADC released a report in January last year after the Pumapi Commission of Inquiry with a list of recommendations to address the security and political crisis in Lesotho. Up to now, we haven't seen much progress into implementing these recommendations. What needs to happen is that SADC needs to hold the Lesotho authorities accountable for implementing these recommendations, because the only way to address the culture of impunity and an example of the attack on freedom of expression is a manifestation of this culture of impunity in Lesotho. The only way to address that is to stop it. And the need to demonstrate a clear break from the past cannot be at the expense of additional human rights violations, which is what we have seen in the past 3 months.
Meanwhile, SABC's Nthakoana, who was based in Lesotho, fled the country for South Africa. She says Lesotho is abusing journalists, stifling press freedom, and adds that she is fearing for her life.
I'm here because over many years, really, I have felt threatened while doing my job, and over the years I have shrugged it off as part of what comes, with the territory. But it gets worse and worse, and it gets personal, and it gets life-threatening. And so in the past couple of months, I've had vitriol, really, on social media that has ended up with people sort of taking it upon themselves to say she should be raped, she should be killed, she should leave our country, and so I did.
Who is saying this to you?
It is people who, I think for the most part now, are supporters, I think, of the ruling regime at this point in time. But it has happened in the past.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
I have received it from supporters in the past of the previous administration, of supporters of the Democratic Congress and the Lesotho Congress for Democracy. And a lot of it, as I say, comes through social media, and it is disheartening and painful. I think the biggest thing that the government of Lesotho must do is speak out. It is to speak out against people persecuting journalists because they do it in the name of their leaders. When they insult you. I mean, recently my foreign editor Shireen Mukadam covered the recent killing of the army commander in Lesotho. a small mistake, like the number of people that died because news is breaking, it is hot, we are on the story and we're trying to find out what exactly happened. And she got verbal insults, personal insults from Basotho. As a result, she ended up not even going to Lesotho because she felt that, how am I going to be safe? And all she was trying to do was cover the story. So it is not just me. It is not just, I mean, recently we saw supporters of former Prime Minister or former Deputy Prime Minister Muthetjwa Missing Lesotho Congress for Democracy harass journalists at a press conference where the party had called those journalists. And the Journalists Union of Lesotho even issued a statement. Now, you have leaders who will speak out against journalists, and when they get attacked in the public space, they don't speak against the attacks on journalists. So at the end of the day, we are left by ourselves with people who think that freedom of expression should not be respected and the freedom of the media should not be respected in Lesotho.
Non-Basotho in Lesotho, or even for foreign countries, as in SADC as well, how can they assist?
If I wasn't sitting here right now, Mpho, I would probably say the media is the best way for anyone really to know what's happening in Lesotho, for sure. But if journalists are feeling like they cannot tell the story because if they speak against one person or another, then their life is in danger, then we have an even bigger problem. But let us hope, Mpho, that the recent deployment of the experts of SADC that are assessing the situation on the ground will indicate all of these issues that need to be addressed urgently in Lesotho, so that the media can play its role of being the voice of the people, regardless of what that voice is, because that's who we are. We cannot side with anyone, but if we start being labeled, and as you've said, it has happened to me with the previous administration, with the current administration, just because you say something that they do not agree with or they don't feel portrays them in a positive light, then they feel that their people should go for you.